live now.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you. It takes a minute for I gotta update things,
Mhm.
tags and such, and then when
Mhm.
people start rolling in, I'm gonna address them and tell them hey, we're gonna have
Mhm.
a political discussion, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. And if you want to
Mhm.
know how things typically go with me, is I don't do like a weird
Mhm.
turn thing to talk. I try to just go with the flow of the conversation. But
That's fine.
if I notice we're veering off topic, I will pull
Mhm.
us back.
Sure. That's fine. Yeah.
All right, so let me just update these tags.
Mhm.
Political discussion. Select content. Politics, sensitive issues.
Mhm.
And yeah, bada bing, bada boom. All right.
All right.
And let me make sure. Let me pull up live on Twitter. Make sure it's all good. Because I'm live. Heads up, I am live on TikTok, YouTube,
Sweet.
Twitter, and Twitch all at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, it's a very common stream setup these days. You gotta get all those different casts together.
Yep, that's what you got to do if you want to have at least a little bit of a chance to build an audience. And I
Yes.
got to tell you, it is the market is so
Hard to do, right?
oversaturated. It's not even so much as
Yeah.
hard to do, so to speak. Well, at least it's not hard to
Mhm.
get the right setup. But
Mhm.
building an audience, yeah, is a fucking
Mhm.
nightmare in this day and
Mhm.
age because everyone is trying to be
Multi-system
a
probably
streamer.
humanity's real
Everyone.
hope,
Mm.
don't you think?
Indeed. I
So
I got into that a little bit myself, so I know what you mean. Yeah, and it's similar with writing, where it's like I'm a writer. There's a lot of people with blogs and Substacks and Twitter pages and Amazon Kindle whatevers and like people say, I mean, I don't know if you know this person's name, but I'm going to throw this out there. Chasing Woodgreen is an example of this. People say, like him, would say, like,
love it.
oh, it's never been easier to, make it or, just get started and da-da-da. It's like, yes, there's a sort of a democratization of access, but
Yeah,
like realistically, that just means that Sturgeon's law is all the more in effect, and the audience, the average consumer of these pieces of content really is still probably struggling to figure out like who to give their time and money to. So saying like, "Oh
exactly.
yeah, just go do it." It's like, well, that's hard, and also like, how do I stand out? That's the other part. And like a lot of people, at that level, he's not even like that high, but he's higher than maybe me, maybe you two, at least in terms of like the Twitter game and the blogger game. Like those people
Hmm.
don't realize like you need a boost. Like he was a named component of a popular-ish podcast for the better part of a year, 16 months,
Yeah,
and
so
that was a significant boost.
he had a leg up, and for
Yeah,
those who
yeah,
are
yeah.
starting from zero, it's hard.
Mhm.
You can start. I mean,
Yeah.
the democratization of access is great.
Mhm.
I want to be clear about that to you and everybody. We
Yeah.
got people in here now.
Yes.
Scholar of the First Sin, GW Tinkles, good to see y'all.
Mhm.
Um, the democratization of access is great for sure. I'm
Mhm.
glad people
Mhm.
are able to do this. I'm glad I'm able to do this with such ease. You know what I mean? With very little asked of me to be able to just jump
Yes.
into all this and get everything I needed to do this way.
Mhm.
That said, like you said, there's a
Mhm.
limited audience. There's just not people are going to be very, picky about
Mhm.
who to give their time and energy to. So,
Mhm.
and the market is
Mhm.
heavily like heavy all the and I mean every market that has been democratized is oversaturated with content creators
Exactly.
to the point
Mhm.
that it's we can't pull from we you can only pull from so many other audiences and such. I mean, people only pay attention to so many people. To the point it's just a lot of
Mhm.
people stagnated. But the best
Yeah.
example, though, for me, would change that for me because I used to stream on YouTube and Twitter, YouTube and
Twitch.
Twitch for about 2 years to an audience of virtually no one. I had like maximum like
Mhm.
5 fucking people. Which, by the way, you can
Mhm.
swear if you do. Just letting you know right now.
Okay.
Uh, uh,
I have historically had a bit of a potty mouth, but I'm trying to. I'm culturally and sort of temperamentally a sailor, but I try to like dial that down. But obviously, no gamer words, which I'm fine with anyway. But yeah,
right on.
I will try to just keep it legit. But if I throw a little like S word in there, or I say something about like people being like I don't know, like I have a salty mouthed friend on Twitter who like really goes off. I don't go that off to go off that bad, but occasionally I get upset. But I think we'll have a pretty like non-upset conversation. So I shouldn't need to.
Right on. Yeah. So, long story short, let me summarize. Basically, what I was trying to say is that
Please, please.
2 years to an audience of virtually no one. Then I switched to TikTok.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
audience immediately. I built that. As my Discord server is huge, is
Yeah, I'll
much
go.
bigger now, and I'll go. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't account for is the algorithm.
Hmm.
It's not on your side if you're a small time fucking streamer. It's just
Hmm.
not. You know what I mean? At least except for on TikTok.
Hmm.
TikTok is the first one that I see that gives everyone at least hypothetically a fair shot of being seen by lots of fucking people, and that made a huge difference for me, and it has allowed me to achieve everything by and large I wanted to achieve as a streamer. Because like I don't dream of being like big, you know what I mean, like Asmongold or whatever the fuck type big, but I would like to get to keep growing, and TikTok and other platforms, and now subsequently YouTube, weirdly enough, has allowed me to do so. So you just gotta find, obviously put yourself out there first and foremost.
Hmm.
Just keep doing that. Just don't stop doing that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
secondly, um, try to find something or other that'll like give you that shot.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because,
Sure.
like I said, TikTok worked for me. You, as a writer, if you wanted to use TikTok, I would recommend that, and that you could, talk about your writings on it and encourage people to go
Mhm.
check out the other stuff. That's what I've done on TikTok. I've encouraged people to find me on
Sure.
other
Sure.
platforms, and it's worked. So that's
I
usually
have.
how that goes.
Yeah. I have heard that the TikTok algo is very newbie friendly, very creator friendly. At least ostensibly. There's also the whole CCP issue and the whole like
Yeah,
what's
big
ByteDance's agenda thing,
bit
and
of a
dare I
trade-off.
say
Yeah,
like yeah. Dare I say like also being that my content is much less visual, at least at the moment, than other things. I'm not doing any fun dance. I don't make really cool videos. I feel like it wouldn't really translate, but I appreciate that. I'm going to stick to Twitter for now and like the other platforms that I use, but I definitely hear what you're saying. It's funny too because like very recently, as you well know, there was talk that in fact wasn't going to be it was going to be no more, but now I guess they got a reprieve and we'll see what happens with that. But yeah.
we'll see what happens. It's still it's in limbo right now. Like you cannot download the app
Mhm.
on the App Store
Right,
anymore, but it's still
right. That's
100% available
it's
for those who still have the
it's
app.
it's operational for those who still have it and have their accounts. Although I heard a girl at the Grammys say like, "Oh yeah, I deleted it because I thought da da da, and now I can't download it anymore."
Yeah.
It's like,
So it's
all
that's what I'm
right,
saying. It's in limbo right now.
exactly, exactly.
But with that said, let's get down to the
Yes.
meat.
DEI,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, DEI.
First off, introductions.
Hmm.
For those of you who don't already
Yes.
know me, I'm Dorico Baker, aka Dorico Rants. Y'all are hearing there right now. Y'all know what I'm about. I play my games and I talk to people, hang with my audience, yada yada yada. Y'all know the score. And
Hmm.
but I generally keep my politics to the side because I don't want to bog y'all down with depressing political discussions. Because let's be real here, politics can be very fucking depressing. But
Hmm.
today I was feeling, you know what? I kind of do want to get back to talking
Political.
to people about politics because as
Hmm.
much as I hate politics, I also enjoy talking about it. So,
Sure.
my boy Quinn here reached out to me on Twitter,
Yes.
and I figured, you know what? Now's as good a time as any to get back into it. So, this
Hmm.
is Edo Quinn. Quinn, would you be so kind of introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm, Quinn. Also known as Quinn on Twitter and all other platforms. It's EDOKWIN. Fun fact. So there's a story on that one, but we'll leave that to the side for now. I'm a writer.
Right.
I'm a multimedia writer, mostly like these days like a blogger, essayist, but and an English tutor. But I also write screenplays, which have not yet gotten any traction, except a few of them have been sold, but none of them have been produced. Anyway, I have a blog and the Adequate editorial, and on that I wrote a piece talking about DEI, but also talking about this other thing called MEI, which, like, to unpack firstly just DEI just straight up real quick, as people may or may not know, I think most people at this point at least know what it means or stands for, diversity, equity, inclusion. DEI is a framework by which organizations, institutions can restructure themselves to better align with those, three words. And the issue that many people have with that, and this is also, by the way, an outgrowth of things like affirmative action, as well as, Barack Obama's Executive Order 13583 from August of 2011 about diversity and inclusion in the workforce. Basically, this policy framework is a way of encouraging, some would say, forcing uh, more diversity and equity and inclusion. And those words can sometimes have um, almost like Soviet doublethink meanings, or just be a little like obscurantist. So the diversity piece generally is about recruiting people of certain identity groups. Generally speaking, like, people who would be considered minorities or marginalized or otherwise worthy of, such efforts. That includes, and this is also a funny thing, this and affirmative action, that includes women, which, obviously, we've had the suffrage movement, we've had the first wave and the second wave, and those are all good. I want to emphasize, first wave and second wave feminism were both good. First wave feminism is about, women deserve the right to vote, and that suffrage. And then second wave feminism was like, women are people, like, for real though, and like, that's good stuff. Third wave and fourth wave gets very debatable, even within feminists themselves, and people like to like kind of hide the ball on that one too. So in the modern day, women are people. Obviously, they've always been people, but like they are recognized as such. And this idea that women are like a minority group is just like statistically incorrect, obviously. But the idea that they're
Yeah.
marginalized is also like very debatable, very contentious in my opinion in the 21st century. So
Yeah.
having them have like this diversity advantage seems a little weird. And then obviously we have like actual minorities. We have blacks, Asians. We'll get to Asians and difference between Asians and blacks in a second, maybe, but like blacks, Asians, Latinos, etc. And by the way, I'm very much what's called a race. I call it a race anti-realist. The I think proper term is race skepticist or race skeptic. Race is fake, like race naturalism. The idea of like physiognomy and four main races or five main races, and like how that means that there's like different species or subspecies of humanity. That's all pseudoscience. That's all debunked. So the idea of race itself is very like dubious in my mind. But for simplicity, we can talk about race or ethnicity and use those kind of words, interchangeably, just for simplicity of the conversation. Equity
Right on.
is about trying to, like, again, sort of push certain results or norms within an organization, like a kind of obligatory equality of outcome, or what's also known as substantive equality, which basically means like you care about the results oftentimes more so than the practices or the fairness used to get those results. You're kind of like putting a thumb on the scale to get the results you want. And then inclusion is probably the most euphemistic or obscurantist of the three, because it's talking about changing the organizational structure. This is all from their materials. This is all literally from DEI materials. You can look this up yourself. But it's changing the organizational structure and the culture to more align with the ideas that DEI practitioners favor. And so all that, as you might imagine, is rather disagreeable. I'm not saying all of it's necessarily per se bad, but it's very disagreeable. It's very controversial. And so um, that stuff, especially when we talk about other things like affirmative action, we talk about like what the role of black people is in society or should be in society, and what other people, including women and Asians and Latinos, etc., actually need in the 21st century. I think there's real, and also how this stuff is perceived and how people who are maybe beneficiaries of this stuff are perceived. I think that creates a nuanced conversation that again can get lost in the shuffle, and people's like, oh, are you saying that helping black people is bad? It's like, well, no. However, right, uh, is there a way in which affirmative action and now DEI can create a stigma and again a very disagreeable um, current social current in society, especially when, dare I say, a lot of people, in the same way people, broadly speaking, including men, recognize the ground truth that women are people, recognize the ground truth that like race is like some dumb weird thing and shouldn't matter. Black people are people, Asians are people, et cetera, et cetera. When we all kind of realize that, like what are we doing here to some extent when we have to put our thumb on the scales to make sure that some people have advantages that other people don't in hiring, in education, in government, etc. And that's part of what the backlash is about. And like I think understandably, if we're being fair to both sides of the debate, we can see that like it's not just some angry white racist incel who's got some criticisms to level at DI. I have some criticisms to level at DI if it wasn't obvious, and
Well,
I'm
let's take it.
not those things.
I want to pause for a
Uh,
moment then.
please, please, please,
Um,
please.
let's see. Let's go. Let's take a step back, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
First off, to GW Tinkles and everybody else watching, we will address comments at the end. Just letting y'all know that right now. I want you to know I'm
Sure,
not ignoring
sure.
anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we're going to address the comments at the end of the discussion.
Okay.
So by all means keep commenting, but just know we
Mm-hmm.
will go back. I will go back and we will read each comment and discuss from there on during the little question Q&A section and such. So just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
clear that up right now. Secondly,
Mm-hmm.
um, so you gave a very good explanation for those who
Yeah.
don't know
Sorry
what
if that was a little
DEI.
long-winded.
No, you're fine. You gave a
Yeah.
well rounded explanation as to what diversity, equity, and
Mm-hmm.
inclusion is and
Mm-hmm.
how it works basically in practice, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
what I want the issue what I wanted to discuss is
Yes.
is a couple things, right? But let's
Sure.
start with the first thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how it works in practice, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in my from my understanding of how these things go is if you want diversity, fundamentally it will require some level of discrimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not what people think in that standards are lowered. It's just if let's say 100 white people and 10 black people all meet the same standard for a job, right? We want,
Mm-hmm.
some of those black people in here. So that means
Sure.
we're gonna have to tell even though we got a bigger pool of white pool people to pull from, we want
Mm-hmm.
some of those black
Mm-hmm.
people. So somebody is gonna have
May
to,
I
what?
May I give you the I think the what you're getting at, which I think is a real thing, or at least it's a real thing in terms of like the way it's described in the policy, especially the
Yeah,
affirmative action policy going back, the
what?
previous century. The basic
Yeah,
idea is DEI or affirmative action can function like a tiebreaker. You have a black applicant and a white applicant. They're both equally qualified. Who should
yeah.
get the job? Tiebreaker, affirmative action says the black person gets the job. That's basically what it should be in practice. In practice, that's
In
not always the
practice,
case, but
and that's not
that's what
always
it
the
should be.
case.
I just say in theory. In theory, so that's what
In
it should be in
theory,
theory. Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, right? So first, I wanted to clear that up with anybody who are not
Sure.
sure how this thing fundamentally works, because that's actually a great way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That it acts as a
Mm-hmm.
tiebreaker, because the the most commonly brought up argument against DEI is that
Mm-hmm.
uh
Lowered standards.
there's lowered standards. That's the most common one I've heard at least. Is standards
Yeah.
are lowered.
Yeah.
The standards are lowered. They're lowering standards.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's no evidence of that. If there was evidence of standards being lowered, we'd have much higher results of uh failure, I guess is the word I want to say. Not failure, but I guess take take medical malpractice and such, right?
Huh?
Thanks to like DEI and affirmative action, things like that, we have more
Yeah.
black doctors, we have more black doctors, more black surgeons, and whatnot.
Sure.
You'd think if
Sure.
standards were lowered, if it were supposedly lowered, there'd be
Hmm.
a very noticeable, quantifiable
Yeah.
amount of cases of black doctors fucking up surgeries and
Hmm.
shit. Like a lot of medical malpractice cases and such. Because of like, well,
So,
we lowered the standards to bring
yeah.
them in here, but it's like, but that's not what happened
Right.
because we're not lowering the
So, and this is
standards. But what do you think about that?
so So unfortunately, this is where I will have to push back just right off the bat because this is a common thing people say, and the reality is, and I hate to bring up this particular agency relative to the stories in the news. I'm not trying to create any like cringe associations like other people. Again, I'm not conservative. I'm not Matt Walsh and any of that. But Trace, I mentioned him earlier, Trace and Woodgrains, he put out this article like last year, back in January actually, talking about the FAA's hiring scandal. And this is one example. There's actually a number of them. I don't want to say to list to get them all be too numerous to list, but there's more than just the FAA. There's actually proof that standards have been, let's say, modified in education and in work, such that certain people are more likely to pass. I'm just going to read you like a little bit off of
Oh yeah, I know
the
about I
first
know
paragraph.
I do know about modifications, but to say that they were that
Hmm.
the
And
argument is not
being
that standards are modified. The argument is that standards are lowered and that they're accepted
well, I'm
to an
being.
extent.
I can say lowered. I can say lowered. I mean, I'm
Okay,
being trying to be nice, but I can say lowered.
no, no,
We can you can use those words are interchangeable in this case. Like I'll put it to you like this: the
but that's what I'm
questionnaire
saying.
awarded points
Are
for
they though?
factors like the lowest grade in high school is science, something that's typically admitted by the FAA in a motion to deny this classification. There's all kinds of evidence in here talking about the ways in which the thumb on the scales is in effect trying to pass people or
Who
hire
wouldn't normally
people
pass?
who would not or otherwise pass. And that's in education, that's in private industry, that's in government. And I'm not going to say it's like this huge pervasive thing that's under every corner, under every rock, but I am going to say like just be kind of calling, no pun intended, calling a spade a spade, like being trying to be honest, because one of the things I always try to do just in life and politics is be honest. There
Hmm.
is fire to the smoke. There are evidentiary arguments to the claims being made, and I think it's like actually doing a disservice again
But then
to the
then I
legitimacy
have
of the argument to
then
dismiss
I have
that.
then I have a question then. Let's
Yes.
say we go with that, right? Because there's evidence
Yes.
to back up that standards were effectively lowered. Um,
Yes.
if there have not been any problems caused by the standards being lowered, then
Mm.
did they really need to be that high in the first place? You get me? Because
Well, again,
if
that's
if,
yeah.
if we're not if we're not coming
Mm-hmm.
into uh like
Mm-hmm.
like I said with regards to the field of medicine, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
medical malpractice as a result. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the big because that's how going back to the big argument is that lower
Yeah.
standards, more problems.
Mm-hmm.
But you can
Yeah.
argue about we can agree that standards are
Mm-hmm.
effectively lowered, right? To give more
Mm-hmm.
people a shot of passing. But
Mm-hmm.
at least I'm not seeing. Maybe you have, but I am not
Yeah.
seeing any evidence
Mm-hmm.
of just of the problems that people say are
Yeah.
that have supposedly resulted from affirmative
Mm-hmm.
action and DEI. I am not seeing more people
Yeah.
dying as a result of this. More people fucking up. They're
Mm-hmm.
fucking up at their jobs as a result of this. If there were,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they
Mm-hmm.
would blast that all over the place. I feel like that would be the the nail in the coffin
Well.
for these respective issues. But instead, everybody's just
Well.
arguing that
Yeah.
about the it's
Mm-hmm.
not fair to lower standards is what it's boiling down to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we need to hire the best and the brightest. But I'm like, but did those standards can you justify
Mm-hmm.
those standards to me? Because again,
Right. Well.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
So that unfortunately is kind of like a goalpost move that, like, if we start from the presumption that the standards weren't lowered in the first place, which is a very, if it were true, it'd be a very strong argument, but it seems to be probably not, or at the very least, there's like significant like evidentiary reason to think that it's like overstated, then we have to like reckon with that first. Like, oh, okay, so there is essentially like a mistruth, understanding, or just lie. I like the word lie sometimes. Like I know, especially from the first Trump administration, the first Trump campaign, news organizations and other people were uncomfortable using that word too aggressively because it's like impolite and like we don't talk like that in politics and journalism. But like if it's a lie, it's a lie. And there are people I think who know this. I understand like you and others may just be misled or not have looked into it as much. But I think there are also people, unfortunately, I call them race hustlers, as do other people, who do know some of these data points because like it's kind of like impossible not to if you are into this issue and looking into it at any like significant depth, and they will just lie anyway. It's like 2 plus 2 is not always 5. They just like to say things that aren't true, and because it helps their argument.
Don't get me
And I
started on that,
think
brother. But
that
keep going.
yeah. And I think that we have to reckon with that first. So if there's a lie or mistruth that's being used in the debate, that's already super disqualifying to one side of the argument. Then we can talk about, oh, okay, so what is the net effect of lowered standards? Well, this is one unfortunately where we could talk about, and I would say I wouldn't want to because I want to try and be like not cringe about it, but we could talk about stories in the news. We could talk about certainly a lawsuit that the FAA, I believe, is still trying to adjudicate. We could talk about various issues and just like safetyness, readiness. I mean, I used to be an air traffic controller in the Navy. It's not an easy job. It's not a fun job. It's not a job that is like low stakes. Dare I say, the standards are there for a reason. They should probably not be lowered under any circumstances, especially just arbitrarily or because we think we want to get more throughput. Throughput of, in this case, like workers, not just throughput of flyers. Although it's both, I guess, in effect. And that's the other thing. Like one of the actual reasons, I will just say, for those has been reported on for those crashes and whatnot seems to be like excessive throughput, people being made to fly and made to monitor flights in the tower of too many objects at one time. That seems to be one of the main reasons, not just like, oh, it was a black guy in the tower or whatever. If it was a black guy as a pilot,
Yeah.
no, it's just like there's too many people. But at the same time, if you combine that with the possibility that some people may be a first year, given too much, work, or may have been passed too easily, and also they're overworked, it's not a good recipe. So I think we just have to kind
Yes.
of reckon with like standards exist for a reason. We shouldn't lower standards, and if we do lower standards, we should be honest about it. And if people want to lie about it, because again, I understand why lying about this would be beneficial, saying the truth would be discrediting in some regards. That in of itself, like the actual act of lowering standards is discrediting, but then the lying about it is doubly discrediting. So you got 2 marks against, let's say,
Yeah.
that side of the debate. That's relevant, right? Like the people who say, like, I would say the non-cringe critics of DEI, myself included, who want to just tell the truth and have a discussion about this, I'm not lying about anything, right? Every single thing I've said so far, every single thing I would say, I can back up with like evidence and data, I can show you links and whatever. If you have a side of the argument, again, not you, but other people who will lie, that's a really serious problem that shouldn't just be like, oh, well, but let's keep going. No, like that's, in my opinion, when someone lies, because lying is immoral, but also just like lying is itself a kind of an action
I'm gonna.
that
St- I'm gonna.
incriminates you.
I'm gonna need to
Right? Please,
stop
please.
you right there because we're veering off into
Oh
to
no,
some
but
different
I understand.
things.
I understand. I
But
understand.
yeah,
I
but I
understand.
get
But
to,
like that's a huge thing for
I
me.
get,
It's a huge
yeah,
thing for me,
I get you, I get you.
right?
Well, I can tell you right now, you ain't got to worry about me lying. I mean, I could be
Oh no,
wrong,
I know you're not a
sure,
liar, but no,
but
yeah, good. You can be wrong, but
I
you understand my point. Like if
yeah,
one
I get
side
what
is
you're
saying a
saying.
certain thing, like yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah,
people
go on,
are
go on, go on.
the debate is muddied by a bunch of liars and hustlers.
Yes,
No doubt.
yes,
Don't get me wrong
yes,
on that.
yes. And
So
more
it's
and
hard.
one side more than the other is muddied. We gotta be honest about that. Like
Oh
if
yeah,
we're acknowledging there's lies on the right, sure. There's people who will say things that may not entirely be true, fine. But I, as of right now, let's say like what we've adjudicated, right? Oh, okay. Is it true or is it not true that stands are lowered? It seems to be directionally correct at minimum. The stands are lowered, so that's not a lie
let's
from the right.
let's say we agree on that. Let's summarize with that then.
Yeah, yeah,
Standards were lowered
yes,
for sure, and
yes,
we have evidence to
yes,
back that up. All right, that's
yes,
clear. We got that out the way. We've addressed that
yes.
point. But now here's my
Uh
next
huh.
question: Is what do you think is more
Hmm.
likely to be the problem? that
Mhm.
for me, I lean more towards this, that
Mhm.
it's a lot of the problems that we see by and large come from two logistical points of failure, right?
Mhm.
So, like you said, like, as you described it, some newbie given too much responsibility
Mhm.
and too much to manage all at
Mhm.
once uh,
Yeah.
creates a lot of points of failure. A lot of increases the likelihood of human error. Things like that. There's a lot of points of failure to take into consideration. Or do you think, at least what a lot of the worst actors are putting out there is just that effectively, yeah,
Mhm.
no, we're this race of people that we're letting in
Sure.
are causing all the
Mhm.
problems. Like, which one do you think is
Right.
more likely to be the case? I like to think
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
you know,
would say this, right? I'm again because I'm not a race naturalist. I'm always gonna start from the perspective of like race is fake and like anyone can do any job in theory. Like obviously, like there are going to be some people who are going to like individuals, not groups, individuals who are going to be better at certain things because they have natural gifts, natural talents, whatever, right? Like there are like Luka Doncic, who's getting traded, is a great basketball player. He's a better basketball player than me, right? Despite the melanin in my skin, right? So like obviously, like there are just people who are better at certain things. That's true, but that's on an individual basis. We have to treat people as individuals. Okay. I think it's more likely that when people are being put into situations that they're not ready for, bad things will happen. The problem with that is if, as we like said, there is a thing where people what this system that's supposed to be a tiebreaker is sometimes not being used as a tiebreaker. So you're putting through
mhm.
people who are less qualified, who are less ready for a position, and then you overwork them. That's where the
And
problem
then
comes.
you
Do I think it's possible?
exactly.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Do I think it's possible that like a person who looks like us can be a great FAA tower guy or a great pilot? Of course, there's plenty of them, right? I've worked with them. I was one at one time. I would argue, but good grades, but like I think we should keep those same exceptional standards for all people because, let's just, this is going to sound all kind of like, I don't know, cringe in a different way, but like back in the days of, MLK and Jackie Robinson, we wanted to make sure the absolute best people, as well as, let's be honest, and this is like the annoying thing that they had to deal with, particularly Jackie, the best people who also had the greatest ability to like suffer and like put up with BS that other people wouldn't, those people were elevated to positions where they could excel and there was no debate, no dispute. It makes everybody look worse, including our community, right? When we put people in positions where they're not ready for and then bad things happen. That
and
shouldn't be the goal.
that's what I'm saying. That should be the conversation because I guarantee that
Hmm.
that's more likely what's happening. You know what I mean? Is
Sure,
people who are not.
sure.
It's not that they can't be ready eventually, but we're putting people who
Yeah,
aren't ready in positions
too
they
soon.
shouldn't be in to do things
Yeah.
that they are
Hmm.
just not ready to fucking do. And
Yeah.
they're expected to just
Hmm.
have this shit on lock right out the gate, right? Um,
Hmm.
and it's resulted in understandably problems.
Hmm.
Um, a good example of the points of failure that I dealt with back when I served too, former Marine. I was an aviation technician at the eye level for deceptive electronic countermeasures and a bunch of other shit too. Um, I eventually became a collateral duty inspector, which is just quality assurance. Um, I never got Y coded because I understood that
Hmm.
which means the shit got kicked back because it was bro. You said something was good and you find out it's actually bad type of shit. No, that never happened to me
Hmm.
because I knew what the fuck I was doing. I understood that if I signed off on something, that shit had better be fucking working. You know what I mean? You run all the tester
Hmm.
checks, you do all the things. It's like you got the regular technicians who work on the gear,
Hmm.
and they come to me and say, "We're done." I'm like, "Bet, let me check." And then I
Hmm.
check, da 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 da, do all the tester checks, make sure everything's good. Then they send it, and then I sign off and say, "All right, yes, it is good." Then they send it, and then I send it up to QA. QA goes in
Hmm.
the bigger QA. They go and check, and this is where you would get Y coded. If it, but it didn't have
Hmm.
it, again. It never happened to me. But they check, and then they sign off on it, and then it goes on the
Yeah.
gear, like, on the aircraft for
Mm,
practical
mm,
use and whatnot.
mm,
That's what I mean. We it's there. The military, by and large, takes logistical points of failure extremely seriously, like trying to
mhm,
prevent as much malpractice and uh, you know, potential or outright deaths, injury and death as much as humanly possible. Um,
mm,
and what I'm seeing is a lot of places don't share in that in that level of quality assurance. They just
mm,
they throw people, whoever the fuck they need, the numbers, whatever the, because again, there's a lot of factors, a lot of reasons it could be, but I'm leaning more towards they need the numbers, they need somebody there, and they're willing to overlook whether or not this person is ready to be there. They just,
mm,
we need someone there so business can continue as usual, and that's
mm,
where all the problems are coming from. Because it's just like, but no, because it's like we don't want to slow down, we don't want to stop,
mm.
we want to keep things going,
Sure.
and unfortunately, that's causing these problems. That's what I believe is what's causing these
Mm.
problems. You may have a different theory as what's causing these problems, but that's mine. In that,
No, no, no.
uh,
That's fair.
yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
That's my
I think
theory. Is
that's
that
yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's
you think
fair.
that's
Like
fair? Yeah.
I think that's fair, and I think like we can agree on that. I think the other issue with DEI and the reason why, again, it becomes this slur, which I think you were right on, just in terms of like a descriptive thing about what's happening in the world, and Van Lathan is right on. Like DEI becomes a slur and becomes a very like toxic slur, like where you can essentially like just say this word and impugn the
And
character,
no,
the standards, the
yeah, you know, the people saying it know what they mean when they're saying it. You know what I mean? They one Charlie Kirk who said that if he sees a black pilot, he's gonna wonder if he's gonna fucking make
sure,
it.
sure.
And I'm like,
So,
but then I'm
so
like,
I,
but yeah, you know what I mean?
I don't know what's in people's hearts, so I try not to just jump to, oh yeah, everybody who says DEI in that way is racist.
Oh
But I
no,
understand
oh
that
no,
there's probably a heavy overlap, or at least some Venn diagram overlap. My main point though is like it becomes this slur because of
oh,
an ecosystem wherein DEI is
one
rife
second,
for
1 second,
this
please.
place.
You keep talking. Just give me 1 second, all right?
Oh, all right, sure. I can do that. I can.
Yeah, continue.
I used to do radio. Yeah, yeah. I used to do radio. So I mean, I can definitely monologue and like hold court. But yeah, so DEI became this thing. It emerged as this thing that again was used and abused. And became this poster child for all these problems, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. And now it becomes this slur that people just use to, again, like invalidate or undermine people, whether or not those people even were beneficiaries of DEI, which is the other thing that, like, Atomic Warder, amongst other people, has talked about, which is affirmative action before it and DEI now exist in such an omnipresent and sometimes like illusory way, or debatable way, that unfalsifiable is a better word, unfalsifiable way, that like anybody who looks a certain way, who isn't, quote unquote, a straight, cishet white male, um, uh, is potentially a beneficiary of DEI, and then you can just like throw that out there and undermine everything about them, which is gross. I mean, example of like an actual racist usage of DEI that's indisputable is like saying um, the beautiful, meaningfully beautiful. And I would say there's a lot of people, a lot of guys, a lot of red blood American, French, and etc. throughout the world, males who would agree that she is beautiful regardless of what they look like and what she looks like. Woman who was, melanated, does not sunburn easily. She won Miss Paris, some beauty contest, and it's like she's beautiful, right? This is not one of those weird things where it's like, oh well, like I don't know about that, chief, or someone getting on the cover of a magazine and Jordan Peterson yelling about it later. No, this is like an actually beautiful person, and then it's like, oh, look at this DEI person. Like, wait, what? What? Like, it's not DEI. She's beautiful, and she was judged and found worthy. And at the end of the day, if you or anybody, not you, obviously Rico, or potentially anybody in the odds, probably not, but if anybody like has an issue with that, that probably is a race thing, like a racist thing. It's like she's not ugly, she's not unqualified against a beauty contest, but whatever. There are qualifications. They actually are. Like you can look. There's like like standards and things they judge on, and she meets all that. And she gets it, and then this like fringe account I don't even want to call out because I don't want to like send any more people there, but I will, I guess. End wokeness, like published a tweet saying, "Look at this DEI, beauty pageant winner." It's just like that's obviously like based in some kind of bigotry, some kind of racism, like obviously. But then if we're talking about as cringe as he is, Charlie Kirk or Matt Walsh or whoever else with complaints about pilots or air traffic or whatever, and we want to have a real conversation, even if we don't necessarily want to validate all of their narratives and arguments. We have to have a real conversation about like why is it that the standards are lowers? Why is the FAA getting sued? Why are people being overworked? Which is separate from whether or not like people are being put into positions they can't like qualify for immediately. And I think that's where people again, like Rico and Van, whatever, and I understand the argument. Again, I'm sympathetic to parts of the argument. Can like miss this thing of just, hey man, like, yes, there are racists and a-holes who will use DEI as a slur, and that's wrong. And I wish that they didn't coarsen the dialogue. But there's also a way in which DEI itself, as a policy framework, is extremely disagreeable and has problems. And we shouldn't like hide the ball on that. We should actually try to interrogate that and maybe find a better way forward. And the other thing I'll just say, didn't think I was gonna be going on this long. It's like a monologue. We came here for Rico. What the fuck? But no. Like the other thing that I think is useful to consider here is like, okay, organizations need policies, or at least the general tenor, certainly in the last like 10, 15 years, has been, if not more, that like organizations need policies for applications and hiring or admissions at schools, etc. So if it's not DI, it has to be something, right? HR departments need something to do. They need pamphlets and paperwork and excuses to have like those dumb meetings. So what are you gonna do? So this is where the other thing is, and this is where I'm gonna sound like I'm plugging, but I'm really not, because like I didn't invent this idea. I just try to like sort of clean it up, codify it. There's this thing called MEI, which is designed, as it might sound, as a like counter philosophy to DEI. And MEI, the original version of it, cringe as it is, in my opinion, cringe, stands for merit, excellence, and intelligence, which I go into in my Substack, which currently is pay gated. I'll just say that, but like, there's going to be a version coming out later that's going to be free again. So just FYI, in case you do check my Substack right now. But there's a number of problems with merit, excellence, and intelligence. The first of which is being like the title. like,
I'm back. I do
there's
apologize. I'm sorry
hey,
for. I want to
welcome back, man.
apologize.
Welcome back.
Yeah, my ex-wife called me. It was. Oof.
Okay. Hey, man. Family's important. I hear you.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
but
was just sort of
I,
holding court, talking about the issues, the nuanced issues I have with you. I mentioned something that I think you might appreciate. There was a beauty pageant in France to crown like Miss Paris or Miss France, and the girl who won was a black girl, a beautiful black girl, by the way. And like anybody who's like not, I'm gonna say a word, retarded, anybody who's not like a bigoted weirdo would be totally fine with that because she's beautiful, she meets all the qualifications, and there are qualifications for beauty pageants.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
weirdos on the internet, including some weirdo Twitter accounts. I named it earlier. I'm not gonna name it again. We're talking about her as like a DEI pageant queen. It's just like, all right, that's
You see,
racist,
but
right?
you
That's
see, you see
obviously
what I'm
racist.
saying? That's what I'm saying. Like I
Yeah,
want to be clear about
yeah, yeah,
something with
yeah.
you. Don't throw the word
Mhm,
racist around lightly. I don't. I
mhm.
absolutely do not. In fact, I rarely use it. I would say in
Okay,
all my
okay,
years of being involved in politics, I have learned
yes.
that yeah, it's an incredibly strong word, and
Hmm.
the blasé nature with which so many
Hmm.
people use it, unfortunately, has done more harm than
Hmm.
good. That
Hmm.
said, the overlap, as you described it, is between sincere concerns and just flat
Mhm.
out racism, unfortunately, is there, and that needs to be
Mhm.
addressed. Because I'm like, there are people who are unambiguously racist and using DEI as their catch-all for like they're piggybacking off of the people with sincere concerns to legitimize their racism. Like you remember,
Mhm.
I'm sure you saw the one about the black mayor that came out after uh
Mhm.
the bridge collapse when the shipping the container ship or whatever you call those fucking
I heard about the shipping container in
ship
was that
crash
in Michigan, or was that in
that
Baltimore? Where
Baltimore
was that?
Baltimore the Baltimore
Baltimore. Okay.
bridge,
Okay.
yeah, they crashed
Yes. Yes.
into it.
Exactly. Okay. What the mayor say?
Uh, the mayor just came out addressing what happened, and all over the
Mhm.
internet, you got motherfuckers calling her the DEI mayor, which
Oh. Okay.
I'm
Okay.
just like, you understand, mayors are elected, right? That's not
Voted.
how
Elected. Yes. Yes. Yes.
they're voted into power. That's
Mhm.
not how that was.
Mhm.
But that gives the game away. That
Sure.
they're
No, I hear
using
what you're
it as a
saying. The same thing was said about Karen Bass. Like Karen Bass is like the DEI mayor of Los Angeles. Like, yeah, if you're elected to office, you can't call that DEI. That's ridiculous. So yeah.
and that's what I mean. Is that people
Mhm.
they have already shown their hand in that
Mhm.
giving the game away that they are indeed racist and using DEI
Mhm.
as their catch-all term to get away with their racism.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
is the problem. Those are the people that I think need to be fucking put on blast more often because
Okay.
they are
Mhm.
like I said, because the concerns you brought up, the concerns that GW Tinkles had brought up, and so on, the
Mhm.
concerns that so many people have brought up are indeed legitimate. There, like you said, there is fire. Like
Mhm.
when there's smoke, there's fire, and in this case, there is indeed
Yes,
fire.
true, true, true.
But
Yes, there's absolutely like animus, like racial animus, driving some of the
there is
DEI discourse on the
absolutely
right. Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yes. Mhm.
And that I think is
Mhm.
making it very hard to have an honest fucking conversation about
Yeah, no, I
the
get you.
very
Yeah,
about the
I bite
very
all the bullets.
yeah, about the
Mhm.
very
Yeah,
nuanced issue that comes
yeah,
with arguably justified discrimination, lowered standards, higher standards, whatever the case may be,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. No, I get.
yeah, you know what I mean. So that's
It.
what how I
That's
would
kind of the.
summarize this.
Sure, sure. That's I will say that's more like Ibram X Kendi adjacent than I would agree with in terms of like I don't believe in positive discrimination as they call it in the UK. I don't believe in like reverse racism or like doing like a kind of racial preferences thing now to make up for actual discrimination in the past, especially again in the 21st century. Like I think that I can bite the bullet that some versions of affirmative action and some versions of policies that, in fact, this is the thing that people forget, MLK was in favor of both race-based, and this is the other part that people don't catch and don't like hang on, which they should, class-based affirmative action and outreach programs. So he was in favor of that, even as he was obviously trying to push for a colorblind future. The thing is, I think, hot take, as a melanated American, right? We've come pretty close, especially I think in some ways we actually we regressed, but we came pretty close to that colorblind future in like the 90s and 2000s, in part because of how many inflection points, including Rodney King, which I lived through. I lived through the riots, I lived through the blacks and the Koreans, et cetera, et cetera. We had like I lived through Moesha, I lived through a Disney Cinderella where it's like Brandy and Whitney Houston, and there's like a multi-ethnic family with I think it's a white king, a black queen, and a Filipino son. Like, and nobody seemed to care. So like
Yeah,
ultimately we
there was a
kind of hit
time
that point.
there was a time no one cared, and no one could tell me otherwise.
Yes.
There was a time that
Yeah,
no
yeah,
one
yeah.
cared about these
Exactly. But
things.
yes, yes, but the thing it is, no one can tell you otherwise, including all the race hustlers who want to say, "Oh, this is a eternally racist country. We've always been racist. We were racist in the 2000s." No, we meaningfully were not. We were like actually kind of post-racial and in the non-cringe sense, the platonic sense, anti-racist in the 2000s. And I think, ironically, that's also what allowed us to elect Barack Obama, among other things. The Bradley effect was basically killed at the ballot box, nationally and locally. And I think like what we need to recognize is that that ground shifted underneath our feet, and it shifted in part because we have these race hustlers who want essentially to like keep this thing going in a way that ironically triggered backlash. Now, I
Yeah.
was going to say, right, there are going to be people on the right who I disagree with on these issues. There are going to be people on the left who I disagree on these issues. I really, again, not a radical centrist. I'm an egalitarian. Like I have like very kind of like liberal views on these issues, but I think those are liberal in the sense of liberty and fairness. I want, if anything, 2024, 2025, right? Happy New Year. I want what MLK was talking about on the other end of his, work, which was the class-based affirmative action, the class-based, the Bill of Rights for the poor. That's what I want. The ironic thing is like you can help people like disproportionately help people who are of a certain ethnic group by
Yeah.
virtue of helping people who are in poverty. You don't
Yeah.
actually have to
Straight.
make it
Straight.
race based. I think.
I figured that out a long time ago too. I was like, we could
Mhm,
solve a lot of these problems if we just did things based off class. Straight up, unironically,
mhm.
we would. We
Yes,
would. You
yes,
catch. You catch
yes,
a lot more people
yes, exactly.
if you go
Yeah,
based
and then
off
so like, and
income.
so yes, and the thing is, no one. I mean, obviously, some people. So I'm not gonna say literally no one, but no one really, if they're fair-minded and again, like, want to do what's best for the country, uh, would really disagree with. Because we see in the rhetoric in politics, we see like in general, whether it's fake or not, we see a lot of like populism on the right and the left. We see a lot of like pro underclass rhetoric in society. Clearly, there's a lot of people, right, left, and center, rich, poor, etc., who believe that this country is and should be a vehicle for people who are poor to have social class mobility and
Hmm.
to make something of themselves, make a life for themselves, make a company or whatever for their family. And so this idea of affirmative action for the poor would be extremely popular. Except this is where it gets also really kind of cheesy. Going back to the race hustlers, like back when this was all being discussed, because this was discussed, affirmative action for the poor was being discussed at the same time affirmative action for race was being discussed. There were people in that movement, in the the Black civil rights movement, who were debating this, and essentially, and I talk about this in my article, and there's evidence for this. Glenn Lauer, among others, has interviewed these people on his podcast, the Glenn Show. Shout out to him. These people who um, wanted this to happen, and there's other people, including people in what we might call the black elite or the black bourgeoisie, who are like, well, if you do it that way, then I don't benefit and my kids don't benefit because we aren't poor. And it's just like, well, sucks to be. I mean, I don't want to be like a total jerk about it, but like honestly, like if you are
No, it
already
sucks.
doing
If
okay
you,
in society,
if
like it does
ex-
suck to be you in that case. And like I don't
yeah,
like.
no, no,
Sorry, I want to finish the point.
I,
I don't like this thing where, well, we have to give people of the black upper class or the black bourgeoisie the same advantages as the poor blacks because the history of blah blah blah. If you're doing okay, I don't need to help you. Like I want to
yeah,
help the people who are not doing okay, and if that includes, by the way, poor white rednecks, poor black rednecks, and poor Asian rednecks, like Rob Henderson, that's who I'm going to help. I'm not going to help like the kids of W.E.B. Du Bois or the descendants of him just because like that's the racially essentialist thing to do. I don't care about that. I want to care.
no.
I want to help the people who need the help, and oftentimes that's not going to be based on race. It's going to be based on class, and I think that's the other thing that like gets missed in this. But yeah, sorry, I
And
had to
as
get on my soapbox real quick.
no, 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 of course. And I want you to know, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I would just as easily tell all the wealthier people making 100K plus a year already. Uh, Obviously, it depends on where you live. So let's just say 500K. Fuck it. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
500K plus a
Sure.
year. The bourgeoisie, whatever you want to call them. I would tell all of them
Yeah.
the pound sand. I'm like, you are not an oppressed class of anything. You are living good.
Yes.
You're good. You don't need any type of affirmative
Mm-hmm.
action. You're good, buddy. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's everybody else who needs help.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we should be striving to do. So it'd be one thing if
Mm-hmm.
this anti-DEI black backlash came with people saying that's what we need, but that's not what's happening. Unfortunately, they're just saying get rid of
Mm-hmm.
it entirely and
Mm-hmm.
no alternative. Just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
bad
No. Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's a
it's
problem.
bad.
That's a problem.
That's the problem I'm seeing is that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. No.
bad
No.
and
That
and
that
they, and
that
they
is a
want to go.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's a
that and
problem. It's a problem that I was commenting on earlier before you got back, which is like I think that there's a whole ecosystem that's already been built. Again, I wrote it in the article. I'm hoping that this article is a new version of this article is coming out from another publication. So not trying to plug it because it's not out yet, but like I wrote in my article, which is sort of paywalled on my Substack, and I can't take it off because like I have an agreement on that part. But like I talk about how there's this new policy framework called MEI, and the title is kind of cringe. I was explaining it like right before you got back. Like the actual like sort of title of that is an acronym for merit, excellence, and intelligence. And the first thing I would just like immediately bite the bullet on is like that title needs to change. It's cringe. Like merit is inclusive of excellence and intelligence, so it's redundant. And also calling out intelligence is like sort of like putting your foot on a rake and stepping like putting it in your face like a cartoon. Like it's shooting yourself in the foot basically because you don't need to say like that. Oh, the implication is DEI people aren't intelligent or whatever. Like that's not you don't need to say that. But merit, excellence, and something, or I have my version is like merit, echelon, and ingenuity. Is the idea that this ecosystem of DEI exists already, hiring committees, HR departments, admissions in schools, et cetera, government departments, they already exist. You could try to just dismantle it if you want, like, Doge and Elon Musk, like, oh, we're going to just tear it all. Like, that's dumb in my opinion. You could take all this material, all this machinery, all these guts, and like rejigger them, like retool them toward a better end. Like have hiring focus on helping people who are like highly qualified but lower class, helping people who like are very competent but have less money or less experience, helping people who again come from rural parts of this country, come from the Ozarks, Appalachia, and yes, the inner cities, Chicago, this and that, helping those people to self-actualize in society and become what they were meant to be, what they're capable of being. There are a ton of really smart people. I talk to them. Again, I'm currently in the South. I talked to a lot of really smart people in the South who just need like a leg up, need a little, little help. And I think that's what we should be focusing on. So I don't think we should like eliminate all forms of assistance. I think those forms of assistance should be retooled to be less racist, right? Less controversial, and that's kind of what I focus on. So,
right on. Well, with all that being said, how are you
mhm.
feeling? Do you feel like we covered all the bases?
I feel good about it. Yeah, I know like we can't be talking all day, and yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, obviously you have questions. If you guys have questions, if anybody wants me to stay around, I can stay around. I'm not really doing anything, but I'm good.
Right on. All right, let's start addressing the comments. All right, let's see. So far, GW Tinkles
Mm-hmm.
has been the one commenting the most. So let's
Okay.
address some of these things. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. We covered this with regards to, as he
Mm-hmm.
said, overlook qualifications to purposely have diversity. He considered that a true shame. Uh, Overlooking qualifications. Uh, as we said before, at least I believe, they said there's more points of failure than just
Mm-hmm.
necessarily that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's more than likely not so much that they're not qualified to do they're not actually qualified to do the job. It's more so
Mm-hmm.
that they're put in positions that they shouldn't be in yet. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
more than likely put in positions they're in too early. You know what I mean? It's just we've already covered this, but I'll say it again to summarize. I think it's more than likely people who aren't ready are being overworked, under-equipped, and the points of failure. And there's too many points of failure that are not, that are more than likely being
Mm-hmm.
overlooked in order to maintain a kind of
Mm-hmm.
readiness, so to speak, and keep things going
Mm-hmm.
when maybe there should be a pause or slowdown or this, that, and the third.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Uh, I think that pause is basically it sounds like a nice idea but it's not real, and a slowdown I think is probably closer, especially if you're going to like do what I want to do, which is like again we restructure these programs to be just like income based. But the music, the show must go on. So I think the best thing we can do is try to make something like affirmative action, again, class-based affirmative action, work for more people in ways that are less controversial, less disagreeable, and then um, as we keep going, as we kind of keep fixing it, we will, I think, find that it'll work better, and there'll be less of these concerns. Because again, like it's not like we don't want to help people or like helping people is bad. It's just like the way we're going about it is like meaningfully disagreeable, meaningfully controversial, and it's like causing more problems than fixing them. So,
Hmm. All right. But what I meant by pause was
hmm
like, say with regards to flights, be like,
hmm
hey, due to you know how a lot of businesses will put up signs
hmm
saying due to lack of staffing, limited resources
hmm
available, this, that, and the third. Um,
hmm
a lot of businesses don't do that, unfortunately. Like our airlines, for damn sure, won't do
hmm
that. And I reckon that what's happening is that they much like what you said, the show must go on. They're more concerned about losing money than they are about anyone's safety.
hmm
Um, so rather than deal with the fact that they're understaffed, under-equipped, and unprepared to keep flights going at the rate that they're going, they'd rather just grab whoever the fuck they can, throw them in this position, and say, keep this quota, this rate of flights, this whatever going. That's
hmm
it. Like, I don't care if you don't feel ready. I don't care if you're new. This is what you got to do
hmm
because we can't afford, or not. We can't afford. We don't want to lose any. We can't. We don't want to lose any money on these flights.
huh. I mean, I think in the interest of safety, there'd certainly be some justification for lowering throughput, right? Like I was talking about earlier, like you should absolutely not be having so many people flying and so many objects and so many people like being overworked in the DC area or in Pennsylvania, etc. That there's cause for accidents because that's also lowering standards in a different way. It's lowering like the standards for operations, not just for who you hire.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's a common sense thing. Like obviously, if the airlines think they're going to lose money or like industry thinks they're going to lose money, like again, like eat it. Like as I said before, I don't really care about somebody's bottom line. I don't really care about like rich people like that. I'm not like anti-rich. I'm not
But we,
anti-rich,
but we,
but
but we don't care, but they for sure as fuck care.
they're outvoted. I understand that like the political action piece is difficult. Sometimes getting people together, political will, etc., is difficult. But just on a like, if you polled this, they're outvoted. So get
Yeah,
your
of
friends
course.
together. You possibly you too, but like people in general should get their friends together and just like say like we want to pause or a lessening of flights for safety reasons in various locations. And if the airlines or other people don't like it, they can suck it. I mean, like
Suck it
they're
up, buddy.
outvoted. They're out. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're not gonna go out of business. You know, what I mean?
yeah.
You're putting people in danger by
Mm-hmm.
trying to force things to continue when you know, because that's the thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you and I both know how this shit works. They
Yeah.
know whether or not they're ready to keep flying. They know.
Mm-hmm.
They know if there are issues. They do know. But whether or not those issues are being addressed is what the real problem is here. Because
Mm-hmm.
if a flight crashed in the military, it becomes a gigantic investigation to find the points to locate the points and or point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
We want to find out what went wrong, who screwed up. But in the private sector, I know they do their investigations. The problem is, despite things failing, they don't stop. Like in the military, if a plane crashes,
Mm-hmm.
all planes are down. Period. We're stopping. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Until we find out what the fuck just went wrong with that one before we allow any other ones
Mm-hmm.
to fly. But the private sector, it's just, well, the show must go on. Sure, a bunch of people
Mm-hmm.
just died and by our hands, but we're oh fucking well. We got to keep this shit going. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I mean is the private sector has significantly less incentive to
Mm-hmm.
address the serious safety concerns that
Hmm.
are the crux of this entire issue, right?
Hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily the lowering of standards to hire people that's the problem. I do think that could be a problem.
Hmm.
Excuse me, sorry. But I think the
You're
real
good.
problem is the safety concerns are being ignored.
Yeah.
They are in order to maintain an
Hmm.
artificial level of readiness that they don't actually have.
Right. Mentioned doctors earlier. Like, did you know? Speaking of like cringe organizations, like actually hurting the American public, the AMA, the American Medical Association, actually pushed during the Obama years, and I think a little bit prior, for less admissions and credentialing of doctors. They said ostensibly because it would hurt people or it would pollute the market, but in reality, we can probably infer they were trying to save bottom line to make sure that they could still have a lot of jobs and like high paid jobs because there would be like a kind of false, suppressed um, marketplace. And like that happens all over the place. So yeah, like wherever there are interests that don't have the American public's interest at play, tell them to pound sand and tell your congressman like, no, I don't want this. Whether that's
Exactly.
the AMA or DEI or the FAA or whatever, just like more people should be politically active in general, in my opinion, and more people should really demand that their governments and their various institutions, even non-government institutions, nonprofits, whatever, have better standards and have like better practices in place that help more people. It sounds easy to say, but like I think there's just a big problem with people like not being engaged enough on these things to even like just go talk to someone and say like this is bad, we should do something about this, or this seems like a problem, we should talk about this. So.
Exactly. All right. And GW Tinkles, I'm not going to address all of your comments because they are entirely different. Some of them were for entirely separate topics that I don't want to go back to. I want to stick to the topic at hand. So I'm going to ignore some of these and go
Cool.
to the one,
Hmm.
this one,
Hmm.
uh, like this one right here. It's a dude. They need to be that high. I'm going to look into that, by the way, GW Tinkles. You said in 2024, we saw more medical malpractice verdicts in history. All right, I'm going to look into that. If I'm wrong, I would like to know, and I'd like to know why there's more medical malpractice verdicts in history than there ever has been. I'd like to know why. All right,
Hmm.
let's see the number of medical. No, we covered that. Oh, and GW Tinker says I like this Quinn guy.
I appreciate it. I try my best. If you do, by the way, I mean, I know it's hard out here, and I am gonna just throw it out there, whether it works or not. Again, reminder: DOKWIN Edo Quinn. That's my name on our platform. So if you ever have an interest, you can Google that. My main thing is Twitter, but I also have my Substack, and if you're interested, hit me up. I like to have discussions, not debates. But yeah.
Right on. GW Tinkles. Um, this is a separate point, but one I do agree with. He says, I also think if you decide to not be chronically online, you'll find that most of the world still does not give a fuck. This is when we were talking about like race and whatnot. I do agree. I do think
Yes.
a lot of the bigger issues we're having are caused
Hmm.
by terminally online people. People, or in our
For sure.
perspectives, can be horribly skewed because we ourselves are terminally online. So that's why I always encourage people to unplug and talk to regular people, because you'll find
Yes.
most, like, for example, like with regards to Twitter or X, you want to call it,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
only like what, like 2% of America actually uses Twitter. You know what
It's
I
a good
mean?
question. No, yeah, I think you're probably right. It's. I mean, like, let me see
I,
here.
I remember reading that a long
What
time ago. It was only like,
percentage?
yeah, look it up. I remember that the user base, total user base, was like 2% of the overall
Mhm.
population. If I remember, please, you're looking it up right now. Please
Right,
tell
and
me
of
what
course
the
it's
actual
no,
number
yeah,
is.
it's an international population, so there's probably like people all over the country. So like all over the world,
All
in
over the
addition to
world,
America.
yeah.
So it's like that. Yeah, yeah. So what percent of Americans use Twitter? I'm going to type in Twitter. Hopefully Google will help us out. Okay, so facts about Twitter. Okay, it says in early 2021, so 3-4 years ago, 23% of U.S. adults say they use Twitter. Now, I will say this: say they use is an interesting turn of phrase. I'll say this: I've talked to people. There's different levels of Twitter use. I obviously am an overly online weirdo. You yourself are a bit of an overly
Same
online
here.
weirdo. I say
Same here. No,
descriptively,
no, no. You're not.
yeah.
You're not wrong. You're
Yeah,
100% correct.
yeah. And there's like people who like use Twitter, but it's like they like scroll, they don't post, or they like post like once a week or once a month, like legit. Like there are people who have not posted since December. I've seen them. I've seen it. So like I think this is inclusive of is like firstly it's like a quarter of the population, so it's definitely non-majority, but also that quarter, if you broke it down, it'd probably be like three buckets, like hardcores, mid tiers, and like filthy casuals. And the filthy casuals, like I said, they count because they do use it, but they don't use it in the same way that we do. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we
Mhm.
use it. We use it recreationally, professionally, and just
Exactly.
masochistically, just all over this bitch. Where we live for this shit. We live for we live for the
Exactly.
fucking for
Exactly.
the chaos and rage bait
I
and all that
literally,
shit.
yeah. I literally just posted yesterday, like the meme from Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not fucking leaving. Like there have been people who've asked me like, hey, you're critical of Twitter and Elon. Are you gonna leave the? No, I
I
was
was here
here
first. God
back when
damn
it
it.
was exactly. I was here. Listen, my experience with Twitter is that it's always been a platform run by idiots, whether that was Jack or Dick or now Elon and Linda. I don't care. Like I'm gonna be here because I want to be on the platform and I like microblogging. I don't care if Elon is cringe. So
Right on. So yeah, no. So it's a minority of the population use, at least America
exactly.
specifically, uses
Yes.
Twitter.
Yeah, in
A
America.
minority uses.
Exactly.
So that means the rest of the country don't
Exactly.
even fucking engage with this shit that we see on a
Correct.
daily fucking basis. The majority of the country doesn't even
Yes.
engage with it. That's why I encourage people
Hmm.
to unplug
Hmm.
sometimes. Take some time off from
In
it.
the
Look
South.
away from, you know what I mean? Talk. I'm in the
Yes.
South too.
Get
Just
offline.
go get offline and go hang out with people.
Yes. Yes.
You'll be
Yeah. I
surprised
was
how
gonna say
many
in
you'll
the
be.
South.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry. In the South, right? People who are used to, I would say, much more like hard lines, quote unquote, about like ethnicity, would be surprised to realize, like I talk to them. And oftentimes I'm gonna say stereotypically, it is like a white, coastal elite liberal. Um, like we all hang out together. Like I hang out with white people all the time. I hang out with Asian people all the time. I hang out with Latinos. I hang out with blacks, etc. Like it's not as much of a thing. We're just like people in the world. Like, do you like soul food? Do you like music? Like that's more of the important thing as opposed. Do you like football? That's more the important thing than like, hey, who did you vote for, or how well do you sunburn? Like that doesn't matter as much. So.
exactly. Let's go to the next one. Da-da-da-da-da. Show D'Angelo, good to see y'all. Now let's
Mhm.
see. Da-da-da-da-da. No, 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 no. He agreed with your merit, excellence, and intelligence thing. He actually says that's actually good. He doesn't think it's cringe.
I would All right, I would say it should be because the way I phrased it, like the merit, excellence, and intelligence thing is like the baseline that it started with. That was invented like a few years ago. I'm pushing for what I call merit because I think that's inclusive of excellence and intelligence. Merit, echelon, or economics. Like again, like class-based affirmative action stuff like that. Merit, economics, and ingenuity. The basic idea being like merit is inclusive of like standards, formal equality rather than like equity, and then ingenuity or not ingenuity. Economics or echelon is inclusive of like class-based uplift and trying to do things that make like economic sense. Like fun fact, the other thing is like if you hire or admit people who are poor but like have really good test scores or a decent resume, those people are going to work harder sometimes, dare I say, all due respect to the lovely upper class, than people who like had a silver spoon of their butt. And then the third
You ain't
part,
wrong.
ingenuity is just like, hey, how can we like actually like think differently about this organization? If we want to do quote unquote inclusivity or diversity of thought, right? Then how can we like make this organization work better for more people? And I think that is a less cringe way of doing something like what these hiring departments and admissions departments have been trying to do for the last 10-ish years.
Yep. Oh, and all right. And GW Tinkles, thank you for agreeing with my point on this one. He says almost any job that
Hmm.
involves safety to one's life, you always have the right to
Hmm.
call a stop work order. And if they continue, it's a free
There you go.
lawsuit until the safety issue is figured out. Yeah, but the thing
There you
is, we
go.
shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to get to the lawsuit part because by then people have either been
Hmm.
hurt or are dead. We shouldn't have to settle out of court
Sadly.
because my
Hmm.
mother died in a plane crash because the airline
Hmm.
uh
Hmm.
put a hired as fuck 20-year-old on
Hmm.
on air traffic control um
Hmm.
who with fucking 6 months of experience. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't have
Yeah.
to sue you for that. I'd rather my mom just be
Yeah.
alive. I'd rather you address the safety concerns so that I don't have to worry
Hmm.
about losing her in the first fucking place. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure.
And but unfortunately,
Yeah.
a lot of businesses in the private sector you rely on lawsuits as a form of to protect themselves actually because they can afford the
Sure.
lawsuits, they can eat the lawsuits, they'd rather eat the law, they'd
Sure.
rather eat the potential lawsuits than
And have a
pay
criminal suit.
and criminal suits uh, rather than fucking pay and do what they need to do to keep people alive.
Oh no, I was gonna
That
say they'd rather have a lawsuit than a criminal suit. That's the two.
oh
That's
right
the
right
other
right
thing. Like it's one thing. It's one thing if you like have to pay a judgment, and also oftentimes those judgments are settlements and not actually adjudicated by the court. They're settled, quietly with NDAs. You don't know the
mm-hmm
number, but like they'd rather they do that than have an actual criminal proceeding where somebody could, in theory, like not just face a fine, but go to jail, go to prison.
yeah
Um,
oh
Fun
yeah
fact: jail is like less than a year, and prison is a year or more. But just fun fact on that. But like they would rather that than something that, like you said, directly impacts their business practices. Because
bingo
a
I
judgment or settlement is not going to impact their business practices.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. That's what I
Yes.
think is the real problem here. That's being completely
Sure.
drowned out by this bullshit culture war.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
still getting away with being able to effectively not
Mm-hmm.
deal with any problems. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
we'll just stop our DEI practices. Cool. Are you going to address the safety concerns?
Right, right.
No.
Or also,
No.
by the way, are you going to address like the cultural factors, like outside of an industry that has a safety concern, like flying? There's other things here to deal with, like cultural cohesion. Like there have been like meaningful, and there's been studies on this too, meaningful issues. Like studies have shown that DEI and like similar programs can. Not always, but can lead to more division within a given organization or workforce. If
Mm-hmm.
you're working at Best Buy or you're going to school at not even like an Ivy League, which is like a random like kind of prestigious school, like I don't know, let's just say like uh, Kennedy School of Business or whatever, and you feel like I don't know if they have DEI, but I would imagine they do, or Michigan, like there's multiple schools in Michigan that are like big DEI boosters, and like suddenly it feels like there's a kind of a toxic culture that for some reason doesn't like, and this is the other thing, it's not just white people, doesn't like white people, doesn't like Jews, doesn't like Asians. Like what are we doing here? Like that's making things worse. It's literally supposed to reduce tension and increases it. That's a problem. So
Exactly, and that's a whole other issue.
mhm,
But yeah, that's what it all boils down to, my brother. All right,
mhm,
we've been talking for almost an hour and a half, so we're gonna end it here.
mhm. Okay.
I will say on first I'll say out to my audience, thank you all for coming. I hope you all enjoyed the
Mhm,
show. This has been a good
mhm,
conversation. I know I enjoyed it. It felt good. It feels good to be
mhm.
back where I look. I like I said, I hate politics, but it is where I feel the most comfortable. I I I I,
I
I
hear you.
I don't understand that. I sincerely don't understand why, of all the things God could have gifted me with the skill and passion for, it had to be fucking
Mhm.
politics. Fuck.
Mm. I, I know what you mean. I would much rather be writing the greatest, movie or TV script imaginable and never even talking about this kind of stuff. But we're here now. We're here now.
But this is where we're at. So fuck it. You know what I mean? Let's just
Yep.
play to our strengths. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
like I said to you
Talking to you too,
before,
man.
yeah, you are more than welcome to stay in the server. And if there's any issue you want to come on live and talk about again,
Hmm.
I just
Hmm.
DM me and we'll set up a time and
I
get the
got
ball
one for
rolling.
you. I will send you. I'll send you a DM because that won't be like immediate, but like if one of these pops off, which it probably will because the world is cringe, I'm gonna send you a DM about it because this is one that I brought to other streamers and they don't want to touch it. So I will. I
Oh,
have an
what is
idea
it?
already. race spending.
Race
Race spending
spending.
and race spending, yes, race spending, also known
Oh,
as
bending.
bending, race. Okay, yeah, bend it like Beckham, or like fire bending, ice bending. Literally,
Gotcha.
the term comes from Avatar, the movie, by Shyamalan, or black washing, or all these other things in regards to colorblind casting, quote unquote colorblind. All these things in regards to like changing the ethnicity of people in film and
Oh yes,
television.
I've talked about this at length with other people. I would love to talk to you about this. That'll be fun.
Sweet. Other streamers don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, and I'm like, why not? It's a good topic.
Why not? It's a good topic.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. We'll DM for sure.
All right, yeah, cool. Then in which case, yeah, my brother, I'll see you. I will see you next time. All right. Thank you all once again for coming. I'm gonna end this stream and start a new one. It's gonna be back to my regular gaming.